Why everything you're doing to improve yourself is making you more fragmented. You're doing everything right, and somehow you're falling apart. You wake up at 5 a.m., you journal, you meditate, you read the books, listen to the podcasts, follow the routines. You're optimizing your sleep, tracking your habits, working on your mindset. You're doing the shadow work, the inner child healing, the boundary setting. You're improving yourself, piece by piece, day by day, and yet, you feel more scattered than ever, more anxious, more exhausted, like you're constantly chasing some version of yourself that keeps slipping further away. You look at your life, all these practices, all these improvements, and instead of feeling whole, you feel like you're managing a dozen different selves that don't quite fit together anymore. You're not failing, you're not doing it wrong, and you're definitely not alone in this. What if I told you that the very act of self-improvement, the way we've been taught to pursue it, is designed to fragment you? That every time you try to fix another part of yourself, you're actually creating another division, another split, another piece that needs to be managed and maintained and kept separate from all the others. This isn't about giving up on growth. It's about understanding why the path you're on is leading you further from yourself, not closer. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. You discover something about yourself you don't like. Maybe it's your anger, your neediness, your tendency to people please. So you do what you've been taught to do, you W intentions ORK on it. You COMPLETEL, lost pined a technique, a practice, a framework. You create a strategy to overcome it, to transcend it, to become better than it, and it works, kind of. You manage to suppress that part of yourself, or at least control it better. You feel proud. You feel like you're growing. But then something else emerges. Another flaw, another wound, another aspect of yourself that needs attention. So you add another practice, another morning routine, another therapeutic technique. You're healing your inner child while also working on your masculine energy, while also developing your feminine side, while also building better habits, while also releasing trauma, while also manifesting abundance. You're not a person anymore, you're a project, a collection of parts being worked on, improved, optimized, healed. And here's what nobody tells you. Every time you identify a part of yourself as broken and set out to fix it, you create a split. You divide yourself into the part that's doing the fixing and the part that needs to be fixed. The enlightened you and the shadow you. The healed you and the wounded you. The disciplined you and the lazy you. You become a house divided against itself. You wake up in the morning and you have to remember which version of yourself you're supposed to be today. Are you the confident person who sets boundaries, the vulnerable person who allows themselves to feel, the disciplined person who sticks to routines, the spontaneous person who flows with life? You're wearing so many masks, playing so many roles, that you've forgotten there was ever a face underneath. Your meditation practice becomes another obligation. Your self-care becomes another performance. Your healing becomes another achievement to unlock. Everything that was supposed to bring you back to yourself becomes another way to leave yourself behind. You see other people on social media who seem to have it all figured out. They're healed and whole and glowing. They've done the work. They've integrated their shadow. They've found their purpose. And you wonder why you're still struggling, still fragmented, still feeling like an imposter in your own carefully curated life. The exhaustion isn't just physical, it's existential. You're tired of managing all these different versions of yourself. Tired of the constant self-surveillance, the endless inventory of what still needs to be fixed. Tired of feeling like no matter how much you improve, you're never quite enough. Carl Jung had a word for this. He called it the war against the shadow. But let me be clear, Jung didn't mean that we should make war with our shadow. He meant that when we do, when we try to eliminate or perfect away the parts of ourselves we find unacceptable, we create the very fragmentation we're trying to escape. You see, the shadow isn't just the dark parts of you. It's everything you've exiled from your conscious identity. It's every emotion you were taught was inappropriate, every desire you learned to suppress, every aspect of yourself that didn't fit the image of who you thought you should be. And here's the paradox that changes everything. The shadow doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be seen. It wants to be integrated. It wants to come home. When you approach your anger as something to overcome, you're not healing it. You're exiling it further. When you treat your sadness as something to transcend, you're not releasing it. You're reinforcing the split. When you see your neediness as something to eliminate, you're not becoming independent. You're abandoning a part of yourself that's desperately trying to communicate something essential. Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation. But individuation isn't about improving yourself into perfection. It's about integrating all the scattered pieces you've spent your life trying to get rid of. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a kingdom, and every quality you possess, your rage, your tenderness, your ambition, your laziness, your jealousy, your generosity, is a citizen of that kingdom. Self-improvement, as we practice it, is like exiling the citizens we don't approve of. We send them beyond the walls, into the shadow lands, and we try to build our kingdom only with the citizens we deem acceptable. But those exiled citizens don't disappear. They gather in the darkness, they grow stronger, they organize. And eventually, they find ways to breach the walls through addiction, through sudden outbursts, through self-sabotage, through mysterious symptoms that have no clear cause. They're not attacking you. They're trying to come home. The fragmentation you're experiencing isn't a sign that you need more self-improvement. It's a sign that you've been practicing self-rejection disguised as self-development. And there's something else happening here, something even more insidious. Every spiritual practice, every psychological framework, every self-help methodology you adopt adds another layer to what Jung called the persona, the mask you show the world. You're not just building a better self, you're building a more sophisticated ego structure, a more elaborate defense system, a more convincing performance of wholeness that requires more and more energy to maintain. You meditate, but you're meditating as someone who needs to be calmer. You journal, but you're journaling as someone who needs to process their trauma. You practice self-compassion, but you're doing it as someone who needs to be less self-critical. Every practice reinforces the fundamental belief, I am not okay as I am. I need to become someone else. This is what Jung called identification with the persona, mistaking the mask for your true face. And the more spiritual, the more evolved, the more healed your persona becomes, the harder it is to see that it's still just a mask. So here's the truth that no self-improvement guru wants to tell you. You can't think your way into wholeness. You can't practice your way into integration. You can't improve yourself into being yourself, because wholeness isn't a destination. It's not something you achieve by adding more practices, more insights, more healing modalities. Wholeness is what's been there all along, underneath all the division, all the fragmentation, all the war you've been waging against yourself. Let me tell you what's really happening when you feel yourself fragmenting. Your psyche is trying to show you something. Every time a practice stops working, every time a new wound emerges, every time you feel yourself splitting into more pieces, that's not failure. That's your unconscious refusing to let you continue the charade. That's your deeper self saying, this isn't the way, stop trying to perfect me, Stop trying to fix me. Just look at me. Just be with me. The fragmentation is actually an invitation to stop fragmenting. Think about it. When you were a child, you were whole. Not perfect whole. You felt your anger fully, your sadness fully, your joy fully. You didn't divide your experience into acceptable and unacceptable. You didn't have a morning routine for managing your inner state. You just were. And then, slowly, the world taught you to split. Your anger was too much. Your sadness was inconvenient. Your wildness was inappropriate. Your neediness was shameful. So you learned to cut yourself into pieces, to show only the parts that were acceptable and hide the rest. Self-improvement, as we've learned it, continues this cutting. It's the adult version of the same process. It promises integration while delivering more sophisticated dissociation. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung discovered that the psyche has its own intelligence, its own drive toward wholeness. He called it the self, with a capital S to distinguish it from the ego. And the self doesn't care about your carefully constructed persona. It doesn't care about your spiritual progress or your healing timeline or your personal development goals. The self wants you whole, and it will create whatever circumstances, whatever breakdowns, whatever dark nights of the soul are necessary to shatter the illusions you've built. This is why everything you're doing to improve yourself is making you more fragmented. Because improvement, as you've learned it, is the ego's project. It's about becoming acceptable, lovable, worthy enough. It's about constructing a self that can finally rest, finally be at peace, finally be okay. But the self isn't interested in your ego's peace. It's interested in your wholeness. And wholeness requires that you stop rejecting the unacceptable parts. It requires that you stop improving and start integrating. It requires that you stop trying to become someone else and start being who you already are. This doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you stop learning or practicing or working with your psyche. It means you change your relationship to the process entirely. Instead of approaching your anger as something to fix, you approach it as a messenger. What is it trying to tell you? What boundary has been crossed? What truth have you been afraid to speak? Instead of treating your sadness as something to overcome, you let it move through you. You stop asking, "How do I make this go away?" and start asking, "What is this asking me to feel? What am I grieving? What am I letting go of?" Instead of seeing your fragmentation as evidence of failure, you see it as evidence that something false is breaking down, something that needed to break, something that was never really you in the first place. The path forward isn't more improvement. It's more acceptance. Not the passive acceptance that gives up, but the active acceptance that includes everything, rejects nothing, and allows the natural intelligence of your psyche to do its work. So what does this look like practically? It starts with noticing. Noticing when you're at war with yourself. Noticing when self-care becomes self-coercion. Noticing when a practice feels like an obligation rather than an offering. Noticing when you're trying to fix something rather than understand it. And then, instead of fixing, you pause. You turn toward whatever part of yourself you were about to exile. You look at it, not with judgment, not with the intention to change it, but with curiosity, with compassion, with the recognition that this too is you, asking to be seen. You might discover that your neediness isn't a weakness to overcome. It's your human need for connection that's been starved for too long. Your anger isn't a problem to solve. It's your vitality, your life force, your refusal to abandon yourself. Your anxiety isn't a disorder to cure. It's your intuition trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that something in your life is out of alignment. This is what Jung meant by integration, not eliminating the shadow, but bringing it into relationship with consciousness. Not perfecting the persona, but recognizing it as a mask and learning when to wear it and when to take it off. Not strengthening the ego, but surrendering its tyranny to the wisdom of the self. You'll know you're on the right path when things get simpler, not more complex. When you have fewer practices, not more. When you feel more like yourself, not less. When you stop performing wholeness and start experiencing it. There's a moment in every genuine individuation process where everything falls apart. Jung experienced it. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of profound disintegration where all his certainties dissolved. And what he discovered on the other side wasn't a better version of himself. It was a more authentic relationship with the totality of who he was. You might be in that moment now. You might be feeling the disintegration, the falling apart, the sense that nothing is working anymore. And I'm here to tell you, this is exactly where you need to be. This isn't evidence that you're doing it wrong. This is evidence that something real is finally happening. The fragmentation you're experiencing is the beginning of integration, not the end of it. The falling apart is making space for the coming together. But the coming together won't look like what you thought. It won't be a perfected self, free from shadow, polished and complete. It will be you, the full, complex, contradictory, messy, beautiful you. The you that contains anger and tenderness, darkness and light, woundedness and wisdom. The you that doesn't need to be improved because it was never broken in the first place. So maybe it's time to stop trying so hard. Maybe it's time to let some practices fall away. Maybe it's time to stop managing all these different versions of yourself and just be yourself, whoever that is in this moment, whatever that feels like today. Maybe wholeness isn't something you achieve. Maybe it's something you remember, something you return to, something that's been waiting for you underneath all the improvement all along. You're not falling apart. You're coming back together, and that requires, first, that you stop holding yourself so tightly. Stop trying to control the process. Stop improving and start trusting that there's an intelligence in your psyche that knows the way home. You don't need another practice. You don't need another framework. You don't need to fix another part of yourself. You just need to stop running from who you are. And when you do, when you finally stop, when you finally turn and face all the parts you've been trying to leave behind, you'll discover something extraordinary. You'll discover that you've been whole all along.